Reality TV star Todd Chrisley sentenced to 12 years for bank fraud and tax evasion. So, reality television couple Todd and Julie Chrisley were sentenced Monday to years in prison, 5 months after they were found guilty of federal fraud charges and hiding their wealth from tax authorities. Todd Chrisley was sentenced to 12 years, and Julie Chrisley was sentenced to 7, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The couple, known for their USA Network series, Chrisley Knows Best, were found guilty in June of fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to defraud the United States by a federal jury in Atlanta. They were accused of conspiring to defraud Atlanta area banks out of more than $30 million in fraudulent loans in a scheme that went on for years. Their accountant was also found guilty of tax fraud for filing false corporate tax returns on their behalf, and Julie Chrisley was further found guilty of wire fraud and obstruction of justice. And the celebrity couple was accused of submitting false documents to request bank loans and using a production company to hide income from the IRS, all while flaunting their lavish lifestyle on TV. And here's the thing, right? This is something that I never understand about these types of people. Like, hey, you were making good money. You had a show where you're making good money. Why the hell are you ruining everything just so that you can have more money when you already got enough money, right? It's kind of like this. Say that you were making $1 million after tax per year. Are you going to risk that to try to make 10 million a year illegally when you were making $1 million free and clear legally? Like, it is beyond stupid to me. It's like, hey, how much of a bigger box do you gotta live in? How much of a bigger box you gotta drive in to the point where you're willing to risk your life, your livelihood, being around your family to get your cheeks clapped by people in prison just so that you could have a bigger box? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I never understand why people just can't be content, right? Like, seriously, if you were to stumble upon this, would you not be okay with $1 million a year after tax legally, right? Like, it's so much money. Like, they were making probably so much money, and yet they screwed it all up. And the craziest thing about this whole story, which I don't think is even in this article, right, is that they also portrayed themselves as like a very, very religious family, right? And yet, he was basically having a gay affair for a very long time, which, by the way, is kind of like obvious that he was not straight throughout the whole show. I watched a couple of the episodes. Like, it was 100% obvious that he was not straight up. Like, it was obvious. But still, like, there's just so many things wrong with this whole situation. And also, you kind of face the same thing with, like, rappers, pop stars, whatever. Well, specifically rappers, right? For example, you have rappers that left the ghetto that started to make really good money, but they end up still committing crimes even though they're making legitimate money now, and yet they screw it all up, right? The thing is, they were probably making a lot of money from their show to the point where they probably could have been making multiple seven figures from the show alone. Yeah, they were probably not making, close to like 30 million or 40 million or whatever, but they could have easily have been making a few seven figures each, like everyone in the show, right? Not to mention, It probably boosted all of their social media accounts, which they all could have leveraged to make even more money, right? It's sad to see people completely screw up their lives for pretty much no reason, like at all. And also, out of all the people that you mess with, you don't mess with the IRS. You pay the IRS because they will completely screw you if you don't pay them, right? They are basically the gang that you do actually have to bend over for because you are going to be completely screwed no matter what if you do go against them. So prosecutors said that while the Chrisleys were earning millions from their show, like I said, and other entertainment ventures, they evaded paying Todd's 2009 delinquent taxes and failed to timely file tax returns from 2013 to 2016. And prosecutors have recommended Todd Chrisley be sentenced to 17.5 to nearly 22 years and Julie Chrisley to 10 to 12.5 years, saying their arrogance merits special consideration. And here's the thing, too. Even though I said that, like, you are basically going to bend over to the tax man, basically, the reality is if you were to hire a really good tax attorney and you weren't doing anything illegal, you were just being stupid, you could potentially lower your taxes to a very small amount. Like, let's say for some reason that you just owe like $250,000 in taxes. If you had a really good tax lawyer, you could get onto a payment plan or maybe even lower that 250 amount to like 50 or 25. Or maybe if they're extremely good, maybe actually wipe that out, right? But that's also if you basically weren't doing anything illegal and you're just basically kind of like being stupid or just not really running your business the best that it should be, right? But what these people were doing was straight up criminal acts, right? You can't do that. You can't just blatantly do criminal acts and think that nothing's going to happen to you. And by the way, you are literally bragging about how much money you have and how much money you're making. So, in the prosecutor's filings for sentencing guidelines, they cited how in 2013, while Todd was in the midst of bankruptcy proceedings, the Chrisleys filmed a promotional video about their extravagant lifestyle. In the video, Todd boasted that he makes millions of dollars a year and bragged that in a year we probably spend over $300,000, sometimes more, on just on clothing. Which to me is like, I don't know, I think I'd probably be happy spending like $100 per year on clothing. You know? Nice hoodie, nice pair of jeans, A-OK shoes, good enough for me, you know? Prosecutors argued their criminal conduct was driven by greed, not necessity. Which I agree, right? They were simply beyond greedy. Which to me, again, doesn't make any sense to me because why not just keep living a good life, still bragging if you want to brag, but instead of like the 30 million, but you're actually just bragging that you're making millions, you know? And instead of bragging that you're spending over $300,000 per year on clothing, you're only spending like 30 grand per year on clothing. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all why people do this. So lawyers for the Chrisleys disputed the prosecutor's sentencing guidelines, arguing the government has vastly overstated the amounts of loss, restitution, and forfeiture. They claimed that neither of the Chrisleys purposely sought to inflict the harm upon the banks, and Todd Chrisley intended to repay the bank loans. Todd, Chrisley's lawyer, wrote in court filings that the government failed to produce evidence that he meant to defraud the banks, the loss amount put forth by the government was incorrect and urged for a prison sentence below the guideline range. Meanwhile, Julie Chrisley's lawyers claimed she had a minimal role in the conspiracy and asked she receive a sentence of probation, restitution, and community service, the Associated Press reported. So let's see some of the comments on this because they are so screwed. Like, they're so screwed. Let's see. I guess in the end, he didn't know best. Oh, by the way, if you want to learn how to get out of debt and see how I got out of debt and grew my net worth, go down below or go to 40inbox.com. Let's see. So you can commit violent crimes in America and get a slap on the wrist, but you better pay your taxes. Here's the thing. I agree. You better pay your taxes. But also, hire good tax people. I always knew he didn't know best. I almost feel sorry for him. Not going to handle prison very well, lol. The only thing is, he might actually like prison depending on the situation. Like, maybe? I guess? Potentially? The mistake is that they flaunted their income on a TV show. Most elite are quiet and hide their incomes in overseas banks. And here's the thing, right? They could still have flaunted their income. The problem is they were flaunting their income to an excess and they committed fraud against banks in the tune of like 30 million bank loans, which is crazy, right? Like, it'd be one thing if they were basically like, hey, to like a bank, we make about 2 million per year. We would like to have a loan for maybe 10 million, right? Because we're making on average 2 million per year and it's growing. Can you give us a loan of $10 million at a certain interest rate? They might have been able to pull that off legally, but they did it for $30 million, which to probably qualify for like a $30 million loan, I'm guessing you're probably going to have to be making close to 5 to 10 million per year. I'm guessing. Like, I mean, it's a crazy number, right? So I don't know. But this is also another thing too. They could have flaunted all their stuff and paid cash for everything and literally not have faced any trouble at all because they were making millions of dollars. Like, they could have just bought all the stuff that they wanted to flaunt with. There was like no reason for them to go over the top to the point where they started to commit criminal acts, right? That's the thing that's so crazy. They went over the top to commit criminal acts when they could have just done what they were doing just at a smaller scale and everything would have been fine. What idiots they are. They flaunted their wealthy lifestyle on TV and filed tax returns that only showed a fraction of the income to support their extravagant living. Don't they think the IRS people watch their show as well? The IRS is good at adding. When things don't add up, they go looking, count on it. Yeah. All fun and games until you get caught. These reality stars are all corrupt and are phonies. These two were so arrogant and condescending to little people, so no more mansions and fancy cars. Looks like the court knows best. By the way, this real life drama could become Chrisley pleases his new friends. An afternoon of grit, humor, and stuff you shouldn't try at home could win an Emmy. A lot of people are basically talking about Trump. Amazing what a little fame and money does to your head. Chrisley blew it. Well, Chrisley's blew it. Their children must be so proud. The thing is, like, this is the weirdest thing about this whole family is like, okay, they were making millions of dollars. Like, the family was making millions of dollars. They lied about it on their tax returns. They committed fraud against banks to try to get $30 million of loans. They pretended to be super religious and acted as if they were super religious and lived a life as if they were super religious, even though the dad was basically getting his cheeks clapped by a former assistant slash partner, and the daughter basically felt like this weird guilty thing to basically feel like she was forced to marry because of premarital intercourse. Like it's just so crazy. Like this whole family got screwed up in the head mainly because of the parents. Like the parents completely screwed up this family head to toe. If you're going to hide money, don't go on TV. Like here's the thing: if you are basically, which I don't recommend anyone doing this, but if you were someone who is in the criminal space, making money criminally, why would you ever go into the public spectrum? You're putting a bullseye right on your forehead. Why are you doing this? And also, if you are making a lot of money the legal way, just keep doing what you're doing. If it's working for you and it's legal. If you're making a good amount of money legally, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't go crazy and try to commit crimes to try to make more money. That is so beyond stupid. That extra bit of money is not worth literally the rest of your life. Let's see. As usual, she gets half his sentence. Surprised the sentences were so light. I'm actually surprised that the sentences were that big, to be frank. Let's see, this person says, I only saw the show a couple times for just a few minutes and I could tell that he was fishy. Too bad he will just go to white collar jail and not regular jail. Well, that's true, right? Because since they weren't really doing anything like violent, they're probably going to go to like really like soft types of prisons. But it's kind of interesting though because it's like we're talking about a lot of money, not like a small amount of money. We're talking about a lot of money. So who knows what the U.S. government is going to end up actually doing? But again, like the weirdest part of the show wasn't even the money. It wasn't all this extra stuff. It wasn't even him with his kids or anything like that. Well, I mean, it was a little bit like that. The thing that got me that that basically rubbed me so wrong was that it was obvious that he was not straight, and yet he portrayed a life like he's a very religious person. That just seemed very off-putting to me. Like personally, I was like it's obvious that these things don't mix. Like, why are you portraying something like this? Like, it's just super weird. And it's also super weird of how much he was basically forcing that type of lifestyle onto his family. Even though you could pretty much tell that he himself didn't really live up to that lifestyle. Anything else? He'll have a swell time in prison. I think he's probably looking forward to it. They should be thrown in jail just because it's a horrible show. I mean, hey, the show was doing good enough for them to make millions of dollars. Like, that's the reality. Feel free to give your thoughts on this. I just think this whole thing is absolutely crazy. And I will never understand why people just can't be content with what they already have. Like, again, would you be so sad that you were making $1 million a year after taxes? Like, oh no, I'm only making $1 million. Oh my god, I'm so poor. Like, what? Like, it's just so crazy to me. Like, you could literally make $1 million after tax for a couple of years and never have to physically work ever again in any job. Like, it's so crazy to me that people do this sort of stuff when they've pretty much got themselves into a position where they're pretty much set for life.